living and thriving with type 1 diabetes. Jen Hanson has grown up with type 1 diabetes. Diagnosed in 1987, she has never let diabetes stop her from pursuing her passions. She is the executive director of Connected in Motion, where she works to bridge the gap between clinical care and real life for adults with type 1 diabetes. She also works with the Children with Diabetes Youth Program, as well as Type 1 Think Tank, and many other diabetes-related programs. Oria James was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at age 10. Since moving to Toronto, she co-founded the first Canadian College Diabetes Network and has worked as a public speaker for the Ontario Ministry of Health and Diabetes Canada. She was recently awarded the Diabetes Canada Young Volunteer of the Year Award for her diabetes advocacy efforts. She now works with the Alliance for Health Policy and Systems Research at the World Health Organization as a volunteer researcher on health systems and non-communicable diseases.
Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Jen, and I'm lucky to be joined here tonight with Oria. We're thrilled to be with you here virtually. We wish we could have been with you in person, but we're all getting pretty good at this new virtual world. We're going to be using our own technical skills tonight, so wish us luck.
Hello, everyone. As Jen mentioned, my name is Oria, and I am a very soon-to-be graduate of the University of Toronto. I'm one of the co-founders of the College Diabetes Network here at U of T, and I've been living with type 1 diabetes for 11 years.
And my name is Jen Hanson. I'm currently the executive director with Connected in Motion and have been living with diabetes for almost my whole life. And we are really excited to be with you today to share a little more with you about how we've been involved in the diabetes community, as well as to tell you more and convince you to get involved in the diabetes community. We hope to share with you a little bit of our backgrounds and how we got to where we are today, but also to teach you how much value we've taken from the community and what opportunities there are for you to get involved, and whether you are living with diabetes yourself, whether you are working in the industry, maybe you're a healthcare professional, maybe you work in for a diabetes company, or maybe you love someone with diabetes. Maybe you're even part of the general public. We hope that what you'll learn today helps you walk away with some actionable steps to get involved and to help make the diabetes community even better and life with diabetes even better. I'm going to toss it over to Oria, who's going to kick things off for us.
Hello, everyone. My name is Oria James, and as I just mentioned, I am a soon-to-be graduate at the University of Toronto. I am really excited to be here today and to shed some light on my life with type 1 diabetes. My diagnosis of type 1 diabetes at age 10 has influenced my life in more ways than I can begin to list. But I do want to start with a disclaimer. I am not here to claim that diabetes is an all-around radiant gift, because it's not. Diabetes is really difficult, and I will never claim otherwise. But today, I'm not focused on the difficulties of diabetes. Today, I'm focused on thriving with diabetes, and I'd love to share how diabetes has played a role in sustaining my happiness and my fulfillment. My presentation today is briefly going to take you through 3 significant periods of my life. The period around my diagnosis where I really struggled with thriving. This is a period of my life where I struggled with mental health and happiness and getting used to my new life with type 1 diabetes. The second period I'm going to take you through is a period I call the turning point. And this is a period of a couple years, mostly through middle school and early high school, where I started to realize what exactly I needed to thrive with diabetes. And then finally, the last period that I'm going to take you through is a period that I call learning to thrive. And that's the period where I'm at today, and I hope to be at for the rest of my life. And that's just going to take you through what I do to make sure that I stay happy and healthy with diabetes. Now, to start, I need to go back to the beginning, back to Oria at age 10, where I was not thriving. In the very early years of my diagnosis, I kept a diabetes fight diary. I categorized my fights into 2 types. There was diabetes-related conflict and non-diabetes-related conflict. And during my middle school years, in grades about 6 through 8, diabetes-related conflict accounted for about 90% of the conflict in my home. That is to say that I was constantly overwhelmed by the conflict that my diagnosis had brought into my life. When I was young, I used to run to my room and cry every single time my parents brought up my diagnosis with dinner guests because I was ashamed and I was embarrassed about diabetes. Sometimes I felt isolation in the physical pain that I was feeling from blood sugar checks and needles to a degree that was debilitating. And some of my most memorable experiences from my childhood are related to dealing with stereotypes of diabetes. I remember going to school and kids would say things like, "You have diabetes, but you're not that fat." Or, "That means you drank chocolate milk as a baby, right?" Or even, "I know how you got diabetes. You eat too much cake." I remember going to birthday parties and track meets and not being allowed to eat cake or eat the other goodies because people didn't know that I was allowed to eat sugar and I was allowed to eat fast-acting carbohydrates. And so this brought me to a bit of a predicament where when I didn't talk about diabetes, I felt really isolated. And yet when I mentioned that I had diabetes, I felt really misunderstood because there were so many stereotypes that I was up against. Long story short, in this period of my life, I was furious at the world. But this brings me to my turning point stage. And this turning point period of my life actually happened over the course of many years. And it occurred because I was able to be connected to really wonderful resources. I got counseling at school and I was connected to a social worker at my pediatric endocrinology clinic. And I think what really ended up making a big change in my life is that I had a medical team that cared about my holistic health, not just my blood sugars and my physical health, but care workers that asked me how I was doing, how my mental health was, how my social health was. And very slowly, through a lot of conversations and a lot of reflection, I realized that I was cheating myself from happiness by not acknowledging the sources of my unhappiness. Not addressing stereotypes made me really unhappy, and feeling isolated made me really unhappy. And it was only by putting names to the sources of my unhappiness did I realize what I needed. And broadly, I just needed two things. I needed active involvement in the way that people understood me and my diabetes so I could proactively and reactively address stereotypes. And I also needed to be connected to the diabetes community to address my isolation. And now before we continue on to the thriving part of my presentation, I do want to quickly talk about my definition of thriving. For me, thriving is not an outcome, and it's also not a constant state of being. Thriving to me is growing and developing and succeeding with an emphasis on the importance of growth and development, because you can fall ill and still be growing. You can face defeat and still be developing. And so thriving as a whole can still occur when you're facing challenges. Now, to address my first need, which was connections in the diabetes community, to address my isolation, I ended up going to diabetes summer camp. And diabetes summer camp helped me rebuild a lot of the confidence that I had lost after my diagnosis. Diabetes summer camp is where I met my first group of friends with diabetes. It's where I first started learning my diabetes outdoor skills, aka how to manage my diabetes when I was outside and being active. And the skills that I ended up learning at diabetes camp were brought back home and to school. And I ended up using those skills as I played basketball and rugby. And later on, when I joined my school's outdoor leadership team, and I became a kayak guide. My experience in outdoor leadership ended up inspiring me to become a camp counselor at the very diabetes camp that had helped me regain my confidence after my diagnosis. And my experience in camp counseling inspired me to join the World Diabetes Tour, which was the most phenomenal trip I've had to date, I think. I went on a hike in the Sierra Nevada mountain range with other young people with type 1 diabetes from all around the world. I found homes in every single diabetes community I encountered, and that made me feel human, and it helped me feel grounded. Now, in a roundabout turn of events, connecting to the diabetes community to address my isolation ended up introducing me to my passion of outdoor activities. Had I not been to diabetes camp as a child and then become a camp counselor at diabetes camp as a teenager and done the World Diabetes Tour as a young adult, I wouldn't have been exposed to outdoor activities in nearly that same positive and safe way. And I also wouldn't have had the opportunity to develop my diabetes management skills in the same way. And so indirectly, addressing my isolation brought me to the hobby that I hold dearest to my heart. I think that Banting and Best would laugh at all the places that I've put their insulin throughout my various trips and adventures and outdoor activities. When I go hiking, and we're above the tree line and it's summer and there's no shade and it's really hot, sometimes I put my insulin into little glacier lakes at night to make sure that my insulin does not warm up. Similarly, when I've gone on really long kayaking and canoeing trips in the summer, I've been known to put my vials of insulin in a water bottle and then to trail them behind the canoe in the water so that the insulin stays warm it stays cool and is out of the warm sun. And then when I go winter hiking or winter camping and it's negative 20 degrees outside, I've been known to put my vials of insulin into my sports bra to make sure that my insulin does not freeze. Now, to address my second need, which was being actively involved in the way that people understood my diabetes, to address some of the misconceptions and the stereotypes, I began educating my peers. Started at the class level and led to the grade level, and then later on to the school-wide level. And as I built these public speaking skills, I started speaking at conferences and being involved in advocacy. And my diabetes advocacy at school specifically led to me becoming student body president in grade 12. And the skills I learned along the way on this journey actually ended up leading me to my most treasured experiences here at U of T, which was the founding of the College Diabetes Network here, where I have made some of my best friends, people that I hope will be able to stay in my life forever. Now, indirectly, educating others about type 1 diabetes and becoming involved in diabetes advocacy actually ended up leading me to my professional interests. And this isn't to say that this wouldn't have happened otherwise, but certainly educating others and being really active in the health promotion sphere helped inspire my passions for public health and global health. I think ultimately, though perhaps indirectly, educating others about type 1 diabetes led to my research consultant position at the World Health Organization, where I have worked as a health systems and non-communicable disease researcher. And it's also led me to my grad school journey. I will be continuing my education, doing a Master's of Science in Public Health at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. Now, before I do my conclusion and I pass this off to Jen, I do want to say the journey that I've described today has been given through a set of rose-colored glasses. I unfortunately haven't had the time to talk a lot about the challenges that I've faced and the defeats that I've faced, but that's okay. That can be for another talk. I think what I hope that you all gain from this presentation is that a lot of positivity and goodness can come from addressing the sources of your unhappiness. I think that thriving is linked to the many decisions and opportunities you make for yourself over the course of a lifetime, really. My philosophy is that you can't effectively plan for the future or learn from the past without acknowledging your needs and your emotions of the present. My own personal journey with thriving with diabetes started when I actively acknowledged how unhappy I was and started asking myself what the cause of that unhappiness was. In my opinion, it's really productive to feel like crap and to acknowledge when we feel like crap, because it allows us, first of all, to be human, but it also allows us to reflect on our real needs. If you had told isolated, unhappy, recently diagnosed 10-year-old Oria that to start feeling happy, she would need to embrace the unhappiness, she would have been flabbergasted. Now, I can't claim to know the equation for thriving, not by any means, but I can tell you, in my experience, thriving with diabetes requires actively acknowledging discomfort when it comes, and it requires actively making decisions that promote both health and happiness. Thank you so much for listening to my portion of the presentation. I'm now going to pass it on to Jen.
Thank you so much, Oria, and I'm honored to follow that up by telling you just a little bit about me, and then moving into talking a lot more about community. And I think that Oria framed this presentation so nicely, because I think it's so important. As you listen to her story, there was probably, or there could have been much that you recognized connecting with your own life, and perhaps much that that didn't. And that is an incredible opportunity for us as a community to bring together many different identities, many different experiences, and make our community stronger. So a little bit about me. I was diagnosed with diabetes when I was 3 years old. And I was really lucky. I always think back to how lucky I was that was back in 1987. I'm now aging myself. And back in that time, my parents just took it in stride, and we continued doing all of the things that my family loved doing. A lot of that was camping, was being outside, was going on road trips. And I think that experience kind of framed out for me a beautiful path and what's brought me to where I am today. I'm also, by training, a kinesiologist, a teacher, an adventure guide, a certified diabetes educator. I've done plenty of school, and I'm excited to be on the opposite side of school now, actually doing things in the diabetes community, largely as the executive director with Connected in Motion, which I'll tell you a little bit more about in a moment. I love to travel. I love to spend time by the lake. So I'm really excited to share with you one of the favorite images that I've seen throughout my life with diabetes, and something that I think I really connect with. And this is the idea that we spend so much of our time as people with diabetes dealing with diabetes all on our own. This image, you'll probably recognize the blue circle, which is the international symbol of diabetes, except there's a tiny little slice out of it. And that slice was taken out of this image by a friend and a peer in the community, Manny Hernandez, to represent the small amount of time that we have direct connection with healthcare providers who are directly helping with us with our diabetes care. The other 99.97% of the time, we are managing diabetes on our own, which I think is so inspiring and so amazing. We are doing the job of an organ all on our own. And that's not easy. And I think that what this shows me is why community is so important, why connecting with other people who get it is so important, because we have so much time when we are out there doing it on our own, and having people surrounding us who we can use as resources. It is an incredible gift and an incredible thing that you can give to yourself to make life with diabetes just a little bit easier. I wanted to share some of the connections that I've had with the diabetes community. And over the years, I've been so lucky to have these experiences. And I felt so privileged to have these experiences. I started at Camp Huronda, a camp for kids with diabetes, when I was 8 years old. And if you're doing the math there and saying 2008 minus 1991, I spent a long time at camp. I went through the program as a camper. I became a staff member, and I stayed until essentially I was too old to go to summer camp. But I was really lucky because right around that time, new opportunities in the diabetes community started opening up for me. I became involved with an organization called Children with Diabetes, whose focus is on bringing together youth who have diabetes along with their families to provide education, support, and fun. I've been very lucky to be involved with the Young Leaders in Diabetes program. This picture that's included here is from the World Diabetes Congress in Melbourne, Australia, where there were over 150 youth from 75 different countries coming together to share what it was like to live with diabetes in their own countries, and giving such amazing perspective about what life with diabetes means outside of my own little bubble. I've also been involved with Beyond Type 1 and had the amazing opportunity to connect with some incredible leadership, to share ideas, and to help build a social platform for people to be able to tell their stories. And of course, my day-to-day I spend with Connected in Motion. Connected in Motion was founded to fill the gap that existed for adults who are living with type 1 diabetes. Back in 2008, especially here in Canada, where I'm from, there were not a lot of ways to connect if you were not a youth and you were not connected to the summer camp system. Connected in Motion was founded by a woman named Chloe Vance, and Chloe was diagnosed with diabetes at 18, so she missed out. And we always laugh when we say that she missed out on being a kid with diabetes, but in fact, what that meant was she missed out on opportunities for community. And when she started to learn about the value of connecting with other people with diabetes, of having someone who she could call when she was just having a bad day, or when she needed advice on how to actually implement a strategy that she'd learned at her diabetes clinic, she realized that there was a massive void out there, and founded the organization Connected in Motion as a place for people to connect once they turn 18. Now, I also wanted to share this resource from Diatribe, which is a wonderful resource that you can Google to learn lots about what's new and happening in the diabetes community. And I was excited to see that they shared some results from a study that was done on what the value is of connecting with peers. I won't read through all of these. I will just leave them there for you to ponder for a moment. But I think that the biggest takeaway is that, and one of the pieces of this list that I was most excited about was that very first one there, to get and to give support. And I think why that was most important to me is because often when we think about a support group or being part of a support community, we think we are going there to get something. But something that I've learned that is such an important part of the diabetes community is that sometimes it's those opportunities to give back and to connect with someone who you can share experiences with. That is the most rewarding. A final piece as we wrap this up for you is that a really cool activity or exercise to do is to look at and think more about what your place in the community is. And when we think about the word community, what comes to mind for me is a group of people who are the same, who feel the same, who are connected by something. And for us in this community, that's diabetes. But within that, there are so many different identities that also come together to make this an amazing space to be and to learn and to grow and to connect. I think that it's an interesting activity to do as well, to think about what your diabetes identity is. And when I think more about that, it's neat to consider that I have something that would help make someone else's life with diabetes a little bit better. Whether you're an athlete that can help someone get up and run their very first 5K race, whether you have had diabetes for 50 years and you can help that person who is newly diagnosed. Maybe you're a college student getting ready to graduate and you really have a lot to share for that person who's just heading off to college. Each of us have that unique piece of our identity that help make this community better. And I'd encourage you to take a moment right now just to think about, what is that for you? So one of the things that we wanted you to walk away with today were some actionable resources, some places that right now you could go connect with, and places that we have found valuable in our lives, both Oria and I, in connecting with other people with diabetes. We will admit that we are both Canadian, and so this is a largely Canadian list. And if there is a way for you to share with your peers some other resources that we haven't included, we highly encourage you to do that. I'm going to toss it over to Oria to tell us a little bit more about a couple we have on the list.
Thanks, Jen. I think that if you're interested in getting involved in advocacy, Diabetes Canada, the Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation, and Life for a Child are phenomenal places to get started. I personally have a fairly substantial history with Diabetes Canada and JDRF, and I recommend them with my whole heart. If you are a high school student or a college university age, the College Diabetes Network is a phenomenal organization to get connected to. I'm a little bit biased here because I helped found one of the chapters here at U of T, but it has been my home over the past 4 years of university. The World Diabetes Tour as well was the reason why I had the most interesting hike of my life. I believe right now they're paused because of the coronavirus, but if you're really interested in outdoor activities and meeting people with type 1 from around the world and you're a young adult, the World Diabetes Tour is certainly an organization you should check out. For scholarships, the Diabetes Hope Foundation is wonderful. They also have a really great mentorship program. I was super fortunate to get connected to the Diabetes Hope Foundation in high school to receive a scholarship as I started my journey at U of T, and also to be connected to another student, an older student at U of T with type 1 diabetes, to help me get adjusted when I first moved to Toronto. And then finally, if you're looking for resources related to children and family and camps specifically, I can speak personally to the first two. D-Camps and I Challenge Diabetes were a really important part of my childhood and my adolescence, but also Riding on Insulin and the Diabetes Education and Camping Association are wonderful places to connect to.
If you're an adult with diabetes, again, we have a little bit of bias. I do because I work for Connected in Motion, but Connected in Motion is a great place to connect. And specifically, there is a program coming up at the end of April, a virtual program where the whole point is to connect with other adults with type 1 diabetes specifically. And you can check that out at the Connected Motion website. I also wanted to give a shout out to the DSMA Wednesday night chats. This is a Twitter chat that happens that I found opened so many doors up for me in the diabetes community. They happen at 9 p.m. Eastern time on Wednesday nights, and each week has a different theme. And there's a facilitated conversation that happens amongst people with all types of diabetes. I encourage you to check it out. Also, the Friends for Life conference should also be under the children list, but there's also programming for adults. That's something run by an organization called Children with Diabetes. And here in Canada, Connected in Motion runs that programming. If you're looking to get involved with research, I encourage you to check out the website connectt1d.ca, and it's up and coming, it's brand new, and it's a way for you, if you're living with diabetes, to get connected with clinical research trials and researchers of any sort across Canada. If you're looking for online resources, there's two amazing places to check out: Beyond Type 1 and also Beyond Type 2. These resources exist to share stories and education of living with diabetes. If you're someone with a story to share, I know that they are also happy to share, to connect with you. So go check them out. And then we also know we have healthcare providers with us as well. And we want to give a shout out to the healthcare providers that took the time to join and to listen into our story today. There's some really great resources for you out there as well. Connected in Motion is running a Slipstream program, so an educational program for healthcare providers. The Best Center does an amazing educational day for healthcare providers. And Diabetes Canada, of course, runs their professional conference, as well as a bunch of single day programs through the year that you can connect with in a variety of different ways. Again, this is not exhaustive at all. And even as Oria and I were going through this list, so many new ideas popped into my head. But I think it's a good starting place for you to find a way to connect to the community if that's not something that you've done before, regardless of what type of diabetes you have, regardless of how you're connected to the diabetes community. We wanted to share our contact information with you as well, because I always joke that having diabetes is almost like a VIP card to meet really amazing, cool people in the community. And if you are walking away today thinking like, I have no idea what my next step is, feel free to reach out, because we think we can help you. We think we can connect you with people who can make your life with diabetes a little bit easier. And so, of course, screenshot this, feel free to reach out. We hope to chat with you. So we'd like to say thank you. And we hope that give you a little bit of perspective of just what it can be like to live with diabetes, but also to be connected and the amazing resources that are out there. And I think that we're a pretty lucky community to be able to be connected with so many amazing people. And thank you all for joining and for being a part of that.
Hi there. Thank you both, Jen and Oria, for those wonderful presentations. Most of you know me. I am Chloe's dad and also work for Diabetes Action Canada. We have about 5 minutes now for question and answers. So firstly, we have a question here. As an educator who is not living with diabetes, what would you say would be the best support that you can give your patients? And we'll put this to Oria and Jen.
Oria, go for it first.
Goodness, sorry, I do not have an answer prepared. I'd say that in my experience, the best support you can give someone with diabetes actually often lies outside their immediate diabetes needs. We see, we have generally healthcare teams that care a lot about our sugars and our A1Cs and our insulin. But what I would have loved to see more of growing up, and even now with diabetes, is a little bit more of an emphasis on social health and emotional health and social well-being. So perhaps in the context of being an educator, or even more widely as a healthcare professional, making sure to check in with your patients on their aspects of well-being that are outside the physical, I think is what I would love to see. Making sure that they're happy in their social life and making sure that their day-to-day happiness is at a level that they'd like it to be at.
And I'd maybe follow that up by sharing something that my educators have done for me that I found so powerful. And a shout out to Dr. Chang, because she's my endocrinologist. But something that has been really impactful for me is that we start off our appointments by asking what I want to get out of that appointment. And it kind of has reframed my whole experience as someone with diabetes, because I'm now going in first thinking about what I need and what I want. That's not something I had done in the past because I was very used to going through numbers and A1Cs and all of that sort of side of diabetes. But now I go in prepared and thinking and can have answers that are actually relevant and are going to let me leave appointments feeling successful. And so, yeah, I think that just kind of reframing of appointments is something that's so little, but has been really impactful for me.
Great. Another question. One of the presentations, Oria, I believe you said, it's okay to feel like crap. And one of the questions is, what advice do you have for those people with type 1 diabetes who feel like crap? They need to be productive, but they still need to thrive, especially during this pandemic. So what advice do you have for them?
That's a really good question. I think that my number one piece of advice for people that are feeling like crap is to be kind to yourself. And I mean that genuinely. I think we can be so hard on ourselves, and especially in the diabetes world, there's so many guidelines to meet. We want good blood sugars, we want good A1Cs. And if you feel like crap, it's okay to say, I feel like crap, and almost to embrace that feeling, because only by acknowledging it and feeling it through do I think we have a way to sustainably get through it. And then once you're done feeling like crap, where you've felt through your crap, that's the point where we can start making steps or coming up with ideas for how to move in a productive direction. And I think, especially in the pandemic, and I do want this to be my takeaway point, we need to be nice to ourselves, regardless of whether we're living with diabetes or not, or perhaps another chronic condition. In order to move forward and be productive and be happy and be healthy, I think that we need to allow ourselves to feel bad sometimes, because only by embracing the bad do I think we can really embrace the good.
Great. Another question that came in. Why do you believe it's so important to have organizations for people with diabetes at universities and colleges?
I can certainly speak to my own experience. I'll say at least with my journey through university, what organizations did for me, like the College Diabetes Network that you heard me and Marley talk about, is that it gave me a place to have community. It addressed isolation, really, first and foremost. And I think that we don't understand how important community is to our well-being, whether it be physical or mental, until that sense of community is taken away. So when we're entering post-secondary education for the first time, or even like the workforce for the first time, having a place where we can feel connected and where we can feel empathized with is crucially important. I think that feeling isolated and feeling like people don't understand you is a big barrier to health, both in an emotional, mental sense, as well as in a physical sense.
Thank you. There's a couple questions here about how one can open a college network chapter. So maybe I can ask them to reach out to you at your contacts. But I just want to get to one question. Is there a way to be connected even for those individuals who are not in Canada with some of the resources that you put out there?
Maybe I can jump in with this one. And in terms of, so I can speak on behalf of Connect specifically. Those are open to anyone, no matter where you live. And I think that one of the silver linings that has come out of the COVID pandemic has been that so many diabetes organizations have taken things online, and that's actually decreased so many barriers that existed to participating in the diabetes community before COVID existed. We're now able to connect with people regardless of their time zone, regardless of their location, and quite often without financial barriers that existed and travel barriers that had existed prior. So I would say you're more than welcome to get involved with Connected in Motion. You're more than welcome to reach out to Oria or I, and we can help connect you with other folks. It's been really neat watching the chat because there's been so many names that I recognize. And you know what? Mostly people who do not live in Canada, but who I know as part of the diabetes community and who I know I could reach out to and help connect folks. So I would say that reaching out is a good place to start, and we're more than happy to help if that is helpful.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Oria and Jen. We're now going to turn it to the next segment of our program. Thank you very much.